Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Before I get going, if you wouldn't mind, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That'd be great. Ding that like bell, because apparently it's really important and it pushes my content out there. But only if you like it. Don't lie on my behalf, right? So, welcome to the wonderfully weird world of UFO aliens and weird stuff. So today we're going to talk about the A70 incident, an alien abduction on a Scottish road, right? But first, let's keep adding to our sightings by adding some of the on-duty police sightings. Okay, so we can increase it. So the first one is short but sweet, and I say it just because they're short, it doesn't mean they're not important. So number 31, because I labelled them, don't I, right? August 1967, location, Worthing, Sussex. 4 campers were reported seeing 2 UFOs over the Rye Bay near Worthing that were later confirmed by 2 uniformed police officers. Now, the object moved quickly across the sky heading in a northeasterly direction. And I'll stick the map there, right? Okay, and that's UFO classification, nocturnal light, on-duty sighting, 2 officers, and that was the source of the Evening News on the 21st of the 8th, 1967. Okay, now number 32, July 1967, 9:10 in the evening, Nottingham in Nottinghamshire, a member of the public, a teacher called Mr. Doy, reported seeing a UFO over a local school. And a PC Holmes attended that school and confirmed the object in the sky. He then reported the sighting to his duty officer and Inspector Street. Now, PC Holmes stated that the object was a bright light spinning on its own axis in a stationary position above the school. Now, the police could not offer any explanation for the UFO, right? And the UFO classification for this is nocturnal light, on-duty sighting, 1 officer, and the source was the Nottingham Evening Post, and that was the 10th to 7th, 1967. Okay, and I'll put it there, right, so the map's filling up. Right, now the next one, right, was October 1967, basically Sussex and Oxfordshire, so there is a big area here, right? Now, following reports by several members of the public, and including an RAF wing commander, police officers across the counties of Sussex and Oxfordshire observed a fiery cross UFO. Now, we've discussed this one before, haven't we? And if you haven't checked my YouTube channel out, check it out. I did a special on this fiery cross sightings because it was everywhere, right? Now, one of them, a motorcycle officer, a PC Brian Cawthorne, observed the UFO between Ringmere and Halland. Now, that's very close to one another, right? Having initially thought the object to be a star. Now, he pulled over to the side of the road to get a better look at it and described its motion as slowly moving forwards and backwards. He definitely confirmed that the object was actually moving by lining it up with a telegraph pole. Now, he reported the incident to his control, was informed that other officers had also reported seeing the object. Now, this was UFO classification, again, nocturnal light, on-duty sight and 3 officers, and this was reported in the Evening News on the 25th of the 10th, 1967. And as I say, if you haven't seen it, check out the cross-shaped UFO wave, all right? Check it out, it's on one of my videos. Really fascinating it is. And, again, loads of police saw it, loads. So, number 34. The following 2 sightings took place within 2 days of each other across the counties of Devon and Sussex, at a time when sightings of fiery cross-shaped UFOs were being widely reported in the media. Okay, so again, a cross-shaped UFO, and this was October 1967 at 4:45 in the morning. Right, location, Sussex. A uniformed police officer observed a fiery cross-shaped UFO. And October 1967 at 4 o'clock, location Devon, a uniformed police officer, a PC Keith Drudge, observed a UFO and said that of his sighting, there is no doubt in my mind it was a UFO. It wasn't a plane. We've seen enough planes not to be fooled like that. All right. So that's UFO classification, nocturnal lights again, on-duty sighting, 2 officers this time, and the source was the Sunday Express. Again, cross-shaped UFO. All right, and it was hitting the media big style then. Right, so the next one is in Stony Cross in New Forest, right, number 35. 1:30 in the morning on the 7th of 1967. As I say, location Stony Cross, the New Forest, Wiltshire. Following a report by a member of the public of an orange ball-shaped UFO in Stony Cross, New Forest, a uniformed officer, a PC David Holloway, was dispatched to the scene. Now, he corroborated the sighting of the orange UFO that he said did a loop-the-loop before heading away in the direction of Southampton. So this was UFO classification nocturnal lights, on-duty sighting, 1 officer, okay, and the source was FCR. I don't know what that is. It may be some sort of UFO group. All right, so next one. Number 36, right? And this was in Spelberg and Chipping Norton, Oxfordshire, up there, okay? And that's where it is, right? 2 on-duty uniform officers observed 2 dark, oval-shaped UFOs on the road between the above location. Now, they estimated the size of the object as roughly 50 feet in diameter each. The craft disappeared in a northerly direction at a height of around 600 feet. All right, and that is UFO classification, nocturnal light, on-duty sighting, 2 officers, and the source for this is A Covert Agenda by Nick Redfern in his book. All right, and check his book out. I have got it. I've downloaded it. All right, so the last one is number 37. All right, and that's in Glossop, Derbyshire. Now, 6 on-duty uniformed police officers observed a UFO over the town from a number of different locations. Now, they described the object's movement as swinging from side to side. Now, we've had this before, haven't we? When I was speaking about the cross-shaped UFO wave, right, one of them said it swung like a pendulum. All right, so this seems to be a common thing, that they swing from side to side. Now, this was UFO classification, nocturnal lights, on-duty sighting, 6 officers. Again, the source was from A Covert Agenda by Nick Redfern's book. All right, so as I say, check it out, it's interesting. Right, so the next story, the story we're going to tell, all right, is the A7 incident. Right, okay, the main story, the A70 incident, the alien abduction on a Scottish road, right? Now, the 1992 A70 incident, sometimes simply called the A70 case, right? Now, a quiet drive down a friend's house one summer's evening would see 2 friends experience events that would alter the course of their lives. Of course you would, right? Now, I'm a massive believer in aliens, I am. You know, I'm 100% UFOs exist. So with that, you've got to accept the fact that some of these abduction stories are true, right? So it would totally freak your life out, wouldn't it? Now, although they were aware of something untoward having taken place at the time, it would be a further 6 months before the intense and strange dreams forced them to seek the assistance of a UFO researcher and ultimately hypnotic regression. So for 6 months they tried to put it out of their minds, but it was the dreams and you know, the intense, strange dreams at that forced them to get help. Now, what's more, the incident was one that the Ministry of Defence, according to recent released government files anyway, appeared to have interest in. They were at least sent details of this account 4 years later in 1996. Might this be, now we're only assuming, as we will examine shortly, due to the fact that many of the details of this incident can be found in other accounts from across the decades of modern UFO research? And if so, why are the government interested, and what do they know that we don't? All right, everything probably. Now, like other similar cases, perhaps a testament to the authenticity of this one, the details that surround and revolve the incident, or this incident, are very similar to others, right? Ones that first appear to have little in common might prove to be crucial to unlocking the truth of such accounts, because the details right, when you start telling these stories, they always seem to be very, very similar. Indeed, one of the researchers who has perhaps produced some of the most extensive research on the case is veteran Scottish UFO investigator and Malcolm Robinson. And check him out, right? I'll put his picture there, right? Because Malcolm Robinson, if it wasn't for these UFO investigators willing to get out there, get their feet dirty, get their hands dirty, get ridiculed and have accusations flying around them, and basically most people think they're stupid. If it wasn't for these gang, we wouldn't have half the information we got. So, yeah, Malcolm Robinson, well done, bud, right? Now, on the evening on the 17th of October, 1992, at around 8 p.m, Gary Wood and Colin Wright were driving along a quiet road near Edinburgh on their way to Tarbrax. Now, that's a small village in East Lothian. Right, I'll put it there, right? They were due to deliver a satellite television system to a friend in the village. However, of course, the journey was one that would change both their lives forever. Colin and Gary, right, it was just after the pair had driven past Harbenbrig Reservoir when they noticed something strange in the sky for the first time, right? Overhead was a strange black object moving in their direction. Unlike an aeroplane or a helicopter, however, there were no lights on the underside or any identification at all. It was just nothing. There was nothing, right? Now, the strange object appeared rounded on the underside and appeared to have 3 parts to it. It was approximately 20 feet over their car and appeared to be around 30 foot wide. Now, furthermore, the bizarre object had a shiny, smooth look to its exterior and appeared windowless. Right? That's their account. Both men later agreed that the object appeared unusual and certainly not like any object they would have expected to see in the skies over Scotland. Or, as they say, anywhere else, right? Then, according to the government files on the incident, right, the object dropped a curtain of white light directly in front of the witness's car. Right, now, this strange curtain stretched right across the road, leaving the pair no option but continue into the strange shimmering glow. Now, believing that the best option was to increase his speed so he could get through it quicker, Gary pressed down hard on the accelerator, and I suppose you would to try and speed through. Now, as he drove into it, Gary would recall that it had the appearance of a detuned television set with multiple flickering lights. And I'm sure if you're at the right age, we know what he means by that, don't we? That fuzzy effect, right? Now, moments after the vehicle penetrated this strange blanket-type beam, each of them blacked out. Common, very common with alien abductions, isn't it? You black out. I know I'll black out anyway. Now, it wouldn't be until the 2 men underwent hypnotic regression that the details of what followed after their car had entered the light, okay? We should note that these details come to us mainly from media reports several months before the MOD came in possession of the case. Although the details of the hypnosis sessions are not detailed in the MOD report. Now, I've got to tell you, I'll get all my information, well, most of it, from a place called UFO Insight, all right? Check them out, they're fantastic, right? And this is where I'm reading it now, right? This is from UFO Insight. It's a great website. So then, right, according to the details of the session, told by Gary to the media, the next thing he realised after driving into the light that he was standing outside the car. However, he wasn't sure exactly where he was stood. Now, he says everything around him was completely dark, with not even the slightest suggestion of light anywhere. So much so, he continues, he couldn't see where the car was, nor could he locate Colin. Now, it was freaking him out, right? And it was around this time that he began to suspect he might have died. So, several seconds after the thought entered his mind, he would seemingly black out again. He's pretty freaked out now, isn't he, right? The next he knew, he was back inside the car, which was moving erratically all over the road. What's more, he could hear Colin, his mate, screaming at him to watch the road and control the car. So he must have been behind the wheel. Right now, despite his mind still coming to terms with where he was and what had happened, Gary did manage to bring the vehicle to a halt. And I think we've got to give him some sort of a clap for that, haven't we? Right? Because he got to be freaked out. Now we should know that some media reports state that the vehicle was on the wrong side of the road, all right, with some even claiming that the vehicle was stationary when Gary and Colin came to, okay, obviously following the bizarre and unnerving encounter. Now, whatever the nature of these discrepancies in general reporting of the incident, the details of what occurred during these blackouts, which further probing would reveal, as we will examine shortly, were much more disturbing than the odd discrepancy about what the car was doing. Now, after sitting quietly for several moments, you would, wouldn't you? The two men would look at each other. Each could tell by the look in the other's eye that they both had experienced something bizarre, even if they had no idea what had happened to them. I mean, your sixth sense is telling me, saying, this ain't right, dude, right? Now, they would take a moment to get a breath of fresh air, as they did, right? As they did, it was obvious that the strange black object was gone, as was the equally strange wall of light that had dropped from above, right? So it's gone, it's done. Now, after taking several moments to gather their thoughts, they would re-enter the car and set off back on their journey to the small village of Tarbrax, right? Remember, they're dropping some satellite stuff off, aren't they? However, it was when they arrived at their friend's home that the very real suggestion in the men's mind that something truly out of the ordinary had taken place began to swirl, right? Or at least to take a little bit of cementing in their brain, because something's out of the ordinary, right? As Gary brought the car to a stop, he would reach down to unclip his seatbelt. However, when he did so, he would realise that his seatbelt was not clipped in. Now, he had completed at least the second part of the journey without wearing it. So this was obviously odd, all right, especially as he was certain he had put it on when setting off earlier that evening. And you would, I mean, unless obviously you don't, but I would say, me personally, I always put my seatbelt on. It's instinctive. You just do it, right? So obviously he's pulled out and his seatbelt's undone. He let the thought go for now and began unloading their cargo with Colin before carrying it to the door of their mate. Now, once there, they knocked and waited. This is where it gets weird, obviously. However, after several moments when no answer came from inside the property, Gary knocked again. A few moments later, a window from the second floor of the house opened. The man's friend himself, looking tired and glazed, pokes his head out and asks why they were knocking on his door at such a late hour. Right? So, we have got what they call missing time. Again, a very similar occurrence, isn't it? Now, of course, this puzzled Gary. He expected it to be around, 20 to 11 when he stated to his friend who was still peering out the bed upstairs window. He said, no, mate, no, it's not 1 a.m. What are you on about? It's 10 to 11, right? He was informed it was almost 1 a.m. Gary protested once more, but when he was shown proof of the time, a cold wave went over him, and somehow, and with no memory of the time, Colin and Gary had lost about 2 hours. Now, it was at this point that his friend inside the house began to realise that something extraordinary must have taken place on their journey. He came downstairs a moment later and let the two men into the house. Now, both would begin to tell what they had seen in the sky, as well as the truly strange curtain of light that dropped from the sky, forcing their car to drive directly into it. Their friend would provide each of the men with a piece of paper so that they could draw what they had seen. Luckily, mate, their mate was willing to have a chat with them. The three men would speak for several hours of the incident. Neither Gary or Colin nor the friend could come up with any reason or explanation for the strange happenings. And by the time the two visitors left their friend's home, it was almost dawn. And believe it or not, but they would both decide to take a different route back to Edinburgh. And you totally understand that, can't you, right? Now, Gary, in particular would experience a state of severe tiredness over the next following days. This, it would appear, was compounded by the fact that he began to have trouble sleeping. And when he did manage to sleep, he would suffer from intense and strange nightmares. All of this would contribute to Gary suffering from severe headaches, which, ironically, would lead him to visit his doctor. Well, you would, wouldn't you? But, however, despite a thorough examination, there was nothing to be found wrong with him. Now, neither of the men wished to report the incident to the police, nor did they, at least initially, wish to speak with a newspaper or other media outlets. Each feared the ridicule that they would receive if they did so. So they did, however, make a report of the incident to the British UFO Research Association. And I'll stick it there, right? The British UFO Research Association. Now, following this, Gary would begin to read more and more UFO literature in order to understand what had happened that evening in the summer of 1992. Now, he would eventually discover strange phenomena investigations, and then ultimately back to Malcolm Robinson, who, as we mentioned, would conduct extensive investigation and research on the incident. And again, we need to thank Malcolm Robinson for doing that, right? It was through Robinson that the suggestion of hypnotic regression would first surface. And while both men were nervous of the prospect at first, they would eventually agree to undergo, well, to some, the controversial procedure. Now, the initial sessions would be conducted by respected Scottish hypnotherapists, Helen Walters. Now, I had to say that slowly, right? The session were as intriguing as they were explosive. And the more sessions they would undergo, the more details would surface. Eventually, right, between the two men's accounts, a fuller picture would emerge. Now, it would appear that when the car entered the strange curtain of light, the vehicle had come to a stop. Now, they don't say if it had stopped on its own, because there was no power, because that's really, really common, isn't it? Then several small humanoids would approach the car, three on one side, three on the other. Then the doors on each side suddenly opened. So they're in the car, they're being approached by these humanoidy things, and their doors swing open. Now, Gary, according to Colin's recollection, were placed on a strange stretcher that moved through the air without any of the strange entities even touching it. It was, he would state, as if the stretcher was floating through the air. Now, Colin, however, would seemingly recall walking along a strange ramp that led inside the strange craft that each had witnessed moments earlier. Now, once inside, he was in a strange room that was lit by a dazzling light. This is perhaps an interesting point, isn't it, really? Because we have mentioned before that many people who claim to have been on board a UFO tell of the strange lighting, right? It's like the light's there, but no one knows where the light comes from. No bulbs, and it seems to be resonating everywhere, apparently. Now, the next thing he recalled, he was in a strange circular corridor. Now, remember, this is hypnosis, so I'll try and read it to you best I can, right? Now, one of the strange creatures were leading him somewhere. It was here that Colin's memory began to appear to jump, right, as if he blacked out again. Now, Colin's next memory was of being in a featureless room with a strange curved walls. The only feature in the room was a chair in the centre. Now, Colin's mind then jumped forward once more. Now he was naked and sat on the chair in the middle of the room. Now, as he sat there, some kind of strange examination of his body was taking place. As this was happening, he would recall looking up at the ceiling, like looking up like that, and he said it was corrugated, translucent, and with diffused lighting seeping through from somewhere behind it. Okay, so he's laying on his... Well, he's sitting there, isn't he? Well, now he was naked, he sat on the chair. As he sat there, some kind of strange thing in his place would take place. As he would recall looking up and saying that the ceiling was corrugated, translucent, and with diffused lighting. Okay, all right, no, that's cool. Now, from this scene, his memory jumped forward once more. Now, still naked, he was in a strange see-through container. It was, he would recall, similar to a glass or perspex, and he had straps around his ankles. Perhaps, though, the most unsettling image was of the other glass-like containers he would see all around him, each of which contained people, all of whom were also naked. As if for like some scenic effect, a strange dry ice fog appeared to be making its way around the room. You know, maybe a strange fog making its way around the room. Maybe it's his mind filling in the blanks. Who knows, right? But that's his words. Then, as he looked around the room, he witnessed several humanoid figures, much taller than the others who had approached their car and led them onto the strange craft. This is when he realised that the three of the strange humanoids were heading in his direction. Now, as this was happening, the container began to frost up. You know that tube he's in? Meaning we could not see through it any longer. Now, this began to make him panic, so much so that he almost began to break down in tears. Now, he says whether it was coincident or not, as soon as the feeling hit him and he began to panic, the frosting in the container began to fade away. Then, following this, a strange device went into motion. Right, a short distance away and approaching the container, two glowing red lights were present on the device, which moved up and down as if it was scanning him. And it probably was, wasn't it, right? Now, as we will examine shortly, Gary's recollection would ultimately prove to be as explosive as Colin's. He would, however, prove to be much more receptive to the notion of exploring just what had happened to them in the evening than Colin would, right? Now, Colin, he would choose to pull away from the media and would refuse to give interviews on the subject. In fact, some reports even suggest that he would reject the incident entirely. For now, though, we will turn our attention to the recollection of Gary Wood. Right, so Colin has had his turn, now it's Gary's. Now, perhaps lending credibility to each other's account, the revelations that would come from Gary's regression session was very much in sympathy with his friends. For example, he would find himself in an almost identical circular room, although instead of a chair, he would find himself laid flat on a table in the middle of the room. And this gets, right, like, even stranger, although there was nothing physically holding him down, but he was unable to sit up. It was like it had an invisible cloak over him. Now, above him was a lens-like device that appeared to be twisting and turning as it moved through the room. Remember, he's under hypnosis, so I'll try and read it as best I can. He says, as it moved, a strange whooshing sound accompanied it. As he watched, this device moved into position above him. He noticed a long, thin, translucent arm had stretched outward directly over his chest. He does continue, though. He says, then without warning, this extended arm suddenly dropped downwards, landing near his shoulder. Now, this appeared to cause Gary some great pain, so much so that it would actually cause him to come out of a hypnotic state during the session. He would, however, once back under, recall further details, right? Some of which were random and appeared to have gaps missing from, like, in between, like Colin did. For example, one particular bizarre memory he would speak of, remember they're under hypnosis, right, is of a hole opening on the floor containing a gel-like liquid. Now, out of this bizarre substance, a column would rise and form, sending out an electrical noise. Much like before, an extension moved out of the tin-like device and stretched outwards towards him. It was eventually level with each of his eyes, allowing Gary to see two glowing red lights at the end of the device. And that was very much like what Colin said, isn't it? So this obviously must be a scanning device. Now, it was around this time that he would notice that there was considerable activity around the pool of liquid in the floor, and it appeared as if it was starting to vibrate somehow. And I can imagine that. You know, Jurassic Park, when, you know, Tyrannosaurus Rex is walking and, you know, the water's vibrating. Maybe it was something like that, right? Now, he continued to watch, and much to his amazement and horror, A tall and incredibly thin, frail-looking creature emerged from it. Now, Gary will recall how it appeared as though it was incredible. Gary would recall how it appeared as though it was an incredible strain for this bizarre entity to free itself from the gel-like substance. He would further recall that the entity appeared very similar to a grey alien, but one that was extremely skinny. In fact, its skin appeared brutally stretched around its thin skeletal frame, with the rib area looking particularly discoloured and bruised. Now, another particularly intriguing detail of the episode was a smaller figure with a heart-shaped face that contained, apparently, strange painted symbols and stripes on it. He would further recall how these markings were very similar to what you might expect to see on the face of a person from Native American tribes. Interesting, isn't it, right? Now, he didn't understand how, but he would ask this figure telepathically, "Why are you doing this?" To which the figure responded, "Sanctuary. We are here already and we are coming here." Whatever that means, right? Now, this apparent two-way telepathic conversation would continue. The figure would inform Gary that their own existence was very much the same as that of human beings. It would state, for example, that we also have concerns and needs. Maybe most intriguing and disturbing in equal measure is the assertion that human beings in many ways are more advanced, but you have been capped. Interesting, isn't it, right? Just what might have been meant with the claim that we have been capped? Indeed, it is a statement that has been pondered over by all who have examined this case, right? Might it be, as some researchers believe, that human beings in the distant past have undergone a collective genetic change from an external source, which has resulted in our potential being essentially slowed down? Do you know what? I'm going to buy that. That's been a rumour knocking around for years, isn't it, right? Now, much such bizarre ideas as telepathy, the ability to see the future, and even being able to leave one's body be something that should be commonplace to us all, but has been intentionally capped by the same intelligence who are visiting us. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally buying that, right? Now, one of the most harrowing moments unleashed from Gary's mind during the regression, and this is quite harrowing, right? During his regression session was one of seeing a young woman sat near the wall of the room. She was naked and with her legs drawn under her chin in an effort to hold and console herself. She would turn to look at him, her face showing the same distress that he was feeling. Her hair was in a loose, shaggy perm, and it was evident that she had been crying significantly. Yeah, quite sad that, right? Now, perhaps of equal concern, although, is the small but quiet... Now, perhaps of equal concern, though this is a small but quiet human man. There was a small but quiet human man dressed in a collar and tie who would stand in the background of the room, seemingly observing proceedings, but discreetly so. Now, does this suggest some kind of military presence? Of course it does. And we have come across this before, haven't we? Right? The Dulce, New Mexico base. There was an abduction case there. And this, I can't remember her name, right? But check my YouTube channel out because it's out there, right? Now, she recalls seeing military men. There's a pattern forming, isn't there? If so, whose country does these military represent? Or might it be, as some researchers suggest, a discreet shadow, a military made up of equally secret departments from the alleged shadow world government? Above all else, for what purpose are they there and what are they doing? Right? Now, the idea of military presence and involvement in alien abduction is one that goes back for decades, almost to the beginning of the modern UFO era. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And whether there is any truth in such assertions, it is easy to see why such suspicions arrive given how closely the world's military guards their UFO files. And they certainly do, don't they? Right, so what do you think then of the A70 abduction case? Two blokes, Gary and Colin, minding their own business, heading off to Edinburgh, about 10:30 at night, and abducted by a UFO. Okay, and then under hypnosis. Right? So, like I said, I'm a big UFO believer. I'm going to buy this one. I simply am. But look, if you know any more, or you know them, or you know the story, drop me a line, right? There's my, whatever it's called, my email address there. Drop me a line, tell me your story, tell me what you think. Drop a comment, that would be fantastic. I really do like comments, I love them, and I'll try and answer all of them. All right, so this was UFO, aliens and weird stuff. Really appreciate you sticking around, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.